Okay, so this right here is the embodiment of what's an evil that's invisible. Made visible is like a big cloud, dark cloud, in comparison to like a person that's floating and it can move around, that's spherical but in shape, but can sort of like a cloud, or it can be morphing in shape but also totally pitch black, but the circles to illustrate that it's like a black hole. But this is a small piece of that is like a shadow thing that's half the size of a person that targets the person. That's like a piece that comes off that messes up a person to what we on this level would be saying like a bad person, and look at that as an individual, but it's really something that's a small piece of a greater thing that you can't see normally, that I saw in a dream, and I've seen something like this in a vision. So that's really a small abstract piece of this that targets the third eye, that messes up the whole person. And that, in the opposite sense, a small piece of this that powers this is actually God energy, light, power. Very, very small in comparison to all of this. A small piece of that can take over. That's what you call possessed. That, when this is defeated by you as an individual, before this is just an ordinary person at first, defeating this thing, it shrinks and shrinks until the whole thing disappears, and maybe it could take a lesser form. That disappears, and all is left is a ball of light that represents God. That comes back to you. Now you become the light. So in the sense that the evilness could hijack a third eye, and that becomes a representation now of this. That defeated is really an illusion that doesn't actually exist. This only exists, that becomes you. Now you're the representation of God. In the sense that all of this stuff is taking place in what we call reality or life. When you zoom out of that, it's like a rectangle, two-dimensional frozen thing, of which like a normal person would be in here, and you're now out here. This could be you in real life, and as a representation that you're shining. If you froze that and zoomed out, the same consciousness as a question mark right there on the third eye, and then a question mark. And here, that represents the imagination spirit, God, that's in the third eye, that's here, that also can take the form of a cloud, or it changes stuff around you in the life. If you froze that and zoomed out completely, it would be like a greater person. That's sort of like the same thing, like a cloud, more like a cloud of light that resembles a body. But what really it is the consciousness that's imagination, that's invisible. That creates something that's like a person, that's like light, and it's like a cloud, and it's like a quantum thing. It's really consciousness, but that's like the greater form. And here is like the same exact consciousness and personality that you have on this level, just in a lesser form that's incomparable to where you're inside of a dimension, essentially. One, and that's just one. And unto that, there may be all possibilities, so lots of them. And so it makes sense where it has the Bible verse that talks about suggesting that you could be possessed by the Holy Spirit, or something like that, to the extent that you're possessed by God, that you are God. That's the whole idea. It would be the complete opposite of this, that you would be on this level, say you're possessed by the Spirit. That's the higher self has merged with you. Now you've become one instead of separate or disconnected. Not even like this, to be separate, disconnected. You wouldn't even have to be hijacked by something. You could just be a person here. But now you're possessed by the Spirit, means that you're one, and you know that. Now the weird thing about this is that this could happen to someone. In a dream, I was shown this, that essentially the person could be on the dark side of things, and it's confusing as why is that happening. In a different dream, that same person, because you defeated this thing, then merges with you. Now, two people become one. This person disappears, but instead of disappearing and nothing, and instead of disappearing and just being a ball of light, now this person disappears and becomes you, and that person's consciousness is now the same thing. That's consciousness that's one here. So now you see how this is how the Spirit interacts, and how we're all one when it says God is one. And so, because a small piece of light, metaphorically speaking, has to be in this thing in order for it to be alive, because it's really just an illusion, because when it's defeated, it disappears.